Joining me now is Mike Papantonio. He is an environmental attorney, lawyer whose firm has filed a class action lawsuit in 3 states on behalf of the shrimpers, fisheries, oystermen, and business owners. Mike, good to have you with us tonight.
Yeah,
I'm doing fine, and I appreciate what you're doing because this is going to have a domino effect on jobs in that region down there, unlike anything we have ever seen before. Where's the liability? Where's the culpability here? What's the call for the lawsuit?
You nailed the story perfectly in the beginning of this program. Deepwater Horizon had 2 trip devices to use in blowout catastrophes. Both of them failed because of either human error or defect. Now, here's what people don't know. BP didn't want to spend the money for a system. It was a fail-safe system, absolutely fail-safe. It's a device system that's used all over the world except in the United States because we give them a free pass in the United States.
What system is that, Mike? What system is that?
The system is called the acoustic switch system. It's a relay system that blows out the bottom of the catastrophe. In other words, it stops the oil exactly from the source. Now here's what's interesting. If BP has to do business in Norway, they have to use the switch. When they do it in the U.S., they don't have to use it. It happened because of this. During the Bush deregulation years, you had the Mineral Management Service that told companies like BP that, gee whiz, we have a new policy. It's the closed-door Dick Cheney policy. That Dick Cheney program allowed the industry to bypass safe systems like the acoustic switch, and there was no need to spend $500,000 with a company that was making $40 billion. It was a complete bypass of safety.
Okay, so Mike, are you telling our audience tonight that they were too cheap to spend $500,000 on the heels of record profits to put in an acoustic switch, which would have triggered the blowout preventer, which could have stopped all of this?
It's the most unreported part of this story out there, Ed. I don't know why the media is not talking about this, but that's what it came down to. Dick Cheney changed political policy with the energy industry. We all remember when he met behind closed doors with the industry. Yeah. This is one of the things that came out of there.
So they did all of this to save, I mean, I'm taken by this. They did all of this to save 500 grand? I mean, was this just a wealth of paperwork and a paper trail and safety precautions that they just didn't want to mess with? What is it? When
this story is told, it's going to look just like the other deregulatory stories where the Bush years, they deregulated this industry just like they did the drug industry, just like they did all parts of the environment, the SEC. You look at it, it's all deregulatory problem. Now, what we're stuck with is we're stuck with a problem where 20 million gallons of oil are spilling into the Gulf. There's no way to clean up. In a perfect world, Ed, think about this. In a perfect world, if everything goes perfectly, we're going to be able to get 20% of the oil from the Gulf. And what ends up happening is the rest of that crude, it becomes catastrophic for an entire ecosystem.
I think the issue now is that the Senate, somebody in the Congress, has got to step forward and call for a hearing on this and have an oil engineer step forward and say, you know, we really didn't need this acoustic switch that was $500,000. I mean, this is the fundamental piece of your lawsuit, is it not?
Well, it's one of them, along with all the other negatives: failure to inspect, failure to train, failure to have a proper group of working people on. And you know what? The other part is that their willingness to cover up the truth. As you said, starting this program, day 1 there was no problem. Day 2 there might be a problem. Day after day it grew and grew and grew. You know why? Because corporate thought that this thing could happen without anybody knowing that there was an oil spill. The longer they could keep it quiet, the better. And in the big picture, we have a Gulf that's still struggling with a $110 billion loss because of Katrina. Yeah. We have a dead zone that's already out there, Ed. The dead zone is as big as New Jersey, beyond this new problem.
Mike Papantonio, thanks for joining us tonight. And when you think about the impact of this, the tourism, who wants to go on an oily beach? Look at all the wildlife that's going to be affected. Look at the fisheries industry that's going to be affected. I mean, it's unbelievable. But remember, it really wasn't that big when it first started. Let's go now to Walter Heng. He's an anti-drilling activist and president of Toxics Targeting. Mr. Hang, at this hour, how do you see the magnitude of this disaster?
It's simply getting bigger and bigger. There are very, very high seas. There's high wind that's going to blow the oil in these very wavy breakers right over those booms. It's going to be a complete bust. It's just going to spread throughout that area. It's going to soak into all those very fragile habitats, and the impact is going to be just simply catastrophic.
From your knowledge, who has the equipment that can go down this many feet and shut this thing off, and how long is it going to take?
No one really knows. I mean, they had the preventer. The preventer was supposed to be fail-safe, and it just didn't work. And that's how come we have this massive, uncontrolled release of oil. They're trying everything they possibly can, because every hour that more oil gushes out of the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, their liability is going to go up. But they just can't shut off this oil. The forces down 18,000 feet below the bottom of the Gulf are enormous, and that's how come that oil is just gushing out under tremendous pressure, and once it's into the Gulf, it's just going to float to the surface, and then the wind is going to blow it wherever it's going to go.
You know, you're presenting it as if this is irreversible damage, and it could be weeks. Is that true? It could be weeks, maybe a month before they can shut this thing off?
It could be multiple months. I mean, they're going to try to trip the blowout preventer, but that hasn't worked so far. They're going to try to drill some relief wells. That could take 3 months. They're going to try to put like a big umbrella over the releases of oil to capture it and funnel it. But the bottom line is they don't know how to stop this catastrophe. Meanwhile, the winds are blowing this oil into some of the most pristine beach areas and wetlands anywhere in the country.
And finally,
this day never should have come.
Well, this is the oil slick, and this is where it's going to hit. Look at all these tourism areas. Look at all, just imagine the commerce that's done in the fisheries industry. It's going to ruin the oyster industry, the shrimping industry, all of it, all the restaurants, all the hotels, all the vacation spots, the infrastructure, and it's going to go on for years. And finally, Mr. Hang, from the way it sounds tonight, with no end in sight on this, this could be the world's worst catastrophe.
It absolutely could, because it's such an incredibly pristine habitat. Secretary Salazar said today that he was going to require BP to clean up every drop. But if they get 10% of all the oil that's gushed out so far, it'll almost be a miracle. What about all that oil that's sunk to the bottom of the Gulf? Thank you.
Thanks so much. And we still haven't cleaned up all of the Valdez either. Thanks so much, Mr. Hang. Appreciate your time. Coming up.